Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. With me today is someone that has held almost every title in the insurance space. Her current role is Commercial Lines Manager with L. Calvin Jones out of Youngstown, Ohio. The cyber diva herself, Miss Mercy Komar. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's a dreary day in Ohio today, and
It's a dreary day in Minnesota, if you can see the
I
background.
can
So,
see the background. Yes, I've never been to Minnesota except to touch down in the airport, so I'm
yeah.
gonna have to get out there.
I
Use some
love it. It's always going to be home, but the winter season, this is pretty much gray is what we get.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's not much better in Ohio in winter season.
Yeah.
I think we don't get quite as much snow as you do, but we get the dreary in
Yeah.
Ohio. Yes,
Yeah. Hey, I just want to make sure. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
it's Komar.
Komar. Okay. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Great. Looking forward to, as we were just discussing a little bit off air, about a number of topics. I know it's going to be entertaining. You are a great follow on LinkedIn, and of course have your specialty in cyber. So really, really looking forward to diving into that. But why don't you give us a little bit about your background and
Mhm.
in this industry and bring us up to your position today?
Well, I started off like most people, had no idea I was going into insurance and got into Prudential as a death claim clerk.
Mm,
Moved into claims with a regional in their local office. And then one of the local independent agents said, "Gee, you're good at this. Come work for me." And I got put into commercial lines. And I've done a little bit of, did some life insurance along the way, but I realized commercial lines is what I was happiest at. And I worked at a couple of big agencies, and then I got an offer to join an agency as a partner. And I did. And we had a beautiful agency. My partner's wife had unfortunately developed an issue, and we sold it to a bank. Oy, oy, oy. That was a mistake. And then the bank basically sold us to a national broker who really didn't want us and let us go. And the gentleman here at L. Calvin Jones, I'd known for many years. And they always said to me, "If you need a job, come in." I said, "Please, I own my own agency." And I walked in, and the owner Al looked at me and he said, "I knew this was going to happen one day." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's an office in the corner."
wow.
So I just took the office in the corner and started all over again because I had a non-compete,
Okay.
and just been here now for, I think 11 years. So this will
Okay.
be my 11th year here.
Okay.
And they needed somebody that would go out and do cold calls. And I like to physically do cold calls and go out and write business. And so I did. And then got dragged into this cyber silliness.
Yeah, so let's get right into that. So that is your specialty. Talk a little bit about, as you were telling me beforehand, talk about how you got dragged into the cyber
Yeah, I
and
got
kind of
dragged.
evolved into your specialty.
Yeah, I got dragged into it. I am not a computer person. I never learned. I could send Bill Gates a note and say, "Bill, I've never learned Word, Excel, or Office." I never learned any of that. I had staff. So I never liked computers much, but I'd go to my CIC updates, my rubles, and I'd hear them talking about this new stuff called cyber, and I'm thinking, not me. And then one day I got a call from a woman that said, "Can you explain to me why this claim isn't getting paid?" And I said, "Well, let me try." And it turned out she needed cyber coverage. Her daughter was an addict who had sold the family password.
Mm,
And the family was doing work for Caterpillar through the Department of Defense. So literally they lost their
wow.
business. It got shut down. And that kind of put me into looking at it and what was it. Then it got me hooked. It was like, okay, what is this? How does this work? And back then you only got about 5 or 6 coverages. That was back in 17. You weren't getting all the
Mm,
beautiful flourishes you get now. There was no crime on there. There was no business interruption. And the president of the agency looked at me and said, "Well, now you're our cyber expert and you're going to do lunch and learns," because I already taught CISR. So I started developing my own courses, tried the lunch and learns, and that didn't work. and just ended up going, working with all of our clients and finding my way, just talking to people. And I started to get involved in LinkedIn, and I met people on LinkedIn, and we started to work with each other. And it's just grown into basically my specialty. And I
Yeah.
teach it, I develop courses for people. I teach it for the Alliance. I'm teaching the independent agents of South Dakota this fall. I'm going to do 3 hours of CE for their annual convention. So it's starting to be something that I just specialize in now.
So let's touch on, you started going to some of the agencies, commercial clients. How would you say your message was received by them talking about cyber?
Well, if you go in the door, or when we even did the lunch and learns, at the time, ransom was everything. That was what you were looking at with a cyber policy. But you were worried about the ransom. Most people, if you're in a smaller business, you don't believe you're going to be ransomed, and you probably aren't. Okay, nobody's going to
Yeah.
ransom somebody for a few bucks. The problem is you've got a bank account, and everybody wants the money in your bank account. And once crime came onto the package, that is the way I learned to start selling cyber coverage. Everybody has a bank account. Everybody, to a company that's looking for a quick $100,000, that's the way to do it. To get into your bank account, either by invoice manipulation, some sort of fraud, bank fraud. And that's what you need to worry about. And that's how I sell the cyber. I sell it with the crime. I don't even mention the ransom when I'm talking to people. They don't seem to be concerned about that. But the crime, they're concerned about the crime. And they know people that it's happened to. And so that's the way I sell it.
As I've been introducing cyber to businesses, I do get a fair amount of, "Oh, we have it."
Mm-hmm.
But of course, as you know, I mean, they have no idea what they have.
Right.
And so that's a hurdle to get over. And maybe they don't see the need, but I like your approach of selling something that's real to them
Yeah.
in their bank account.
Yeah, and if I go out and I start to talk to, I tried the other method. Okay, I tried the super agent walking out with, look at the 13 different coverages we're going to give you on this policy. By the time you get to coverage number 5, they're not listening any longer.
Right.
Okay, they figured out no. So I just say, look, you got a bank account. Somebody's after it. This is how they're going to go after it. This is what's going to happen. I can sell you the coverage, and all these other things will come along with it. And that they seem to understand.
Yeah. It's something real. It's something
Yeah.
it's the deal with every day. Can you talk a little bit about, you've been a part of a couple claims on the crime side. Can you touch
Yeah.
a little bit on what those were like and what the effect was to the business?
Both of them were, one was invoice manipulation, one was reverse invoice manipulation, and I had another invoice manipulation. They've all three been.
Okay.
The first one, in fact, I wasn't insuring them when they happened. I got a call from an MSP, and he said, I've got a client that had a claim. They need to have cyber coverage. So I went out and talked to them, and what had happened was a typical invoice manipulation. One of their clients in Detroit had been, someone had gotten into their system. They read all their clients' information. They knew everybody's names. And so they contacted the insured and said, here's your invoice for this month for such and such. We're changing banks. And would you send it to this new bank instead? And this client said, sure. And never questioned, never asked anything, because they knew that they thought it came from the right person, and sent, I think it was $110,000.
Oh my goodness.
Now, they caught it soon enough. If you can catch it within 72 hours, you can usually get at least part of the money back. With the help of the FBI and insurance companies nowadays, they can usually get with the banks and stop it as it flows along. They got a lot of theirs back. The next one I had was was a client that had a tool and die shop. Now we're talking 4 guys in a tool and die shop and 2 owners. One of the owners obviously let something in, open something he shouldn't have. And the bad guys got in, got all the information on them. Now, if you look at the word tool and you change that L to a 1, most people aren't going to catch that in an email.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's what these people did. They changed that email just that little bit. And they knew that there was an invoice that was going to be going out for $141,000. And they sent out a letter and said, "Hi, it's John. And you know what? We had a really tough time with such and such a bank. And we've redone all our mortgages and our loans and everything to da 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 bank in Wisconsin. And we need you to send, going forward, all of our checks to there." And the people didn't question. They shipped $141,000
Oh
off
my
the
goodness.
phone. Now that one they didn't get the money back. That situation, by the time it was caught, was about 10 days out. So now I've got a client that has no money because his vendor can't send him the money, and he's lost his money. So it's like both sides have lost. How do you fix that? You can't. You just can't fix that. They've both lost $110,000 or $141,000 when you get right down to it. So those are the ones that I'm seeing right now, where there's invoice manipulation going along, and those are what people are hearing about. Sometimes you won't hear it publicly, but maybe a buddy of yours. I've got a buddy and he had something happen. I'll hear that a lot. Well, I'll go out and talk to the client and they'll say, "Yeah, one of my buddies had that happen. No, nobody knows about it, but I know they lost $20,000, things like that." So they're hearing it in the grapevine. So by the time I mention it, it's not unfamiliar to them. They know what's going on. And if that's what makes them buy the policy, then God bless. That's wonderful. They're still getting the liability, they're still getting the business interruption they need, and all the other coverages. So if it works.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about why you think that a lot of the crime that goes on or the breaches that go on are underreported.
Well, people are ashamed. Okay, they've done something dumb, is what they think. Okay, I let somebody into my system because I wasn't paying attention. They got in. I don't want my clients to know, because a lot of the clients won't come back if they find out that their information has been taken or that money has been taken. They don't want to report it to the police. They don't want to report it to the FBI. They don't want to report it to the insurance agent. They just want to let it go under the table if they can afford to. And if it's a little bit of money, you can afford it. But if it's big money, my clients don't have $141,000 lying around. And most of your clients don't either. And they need to know that they can be protected if something like that should happen.
Yeah. Yeah. As I mentioned before, I had a very minor breach where someone actually got into my email and sent a return email from whatever my last email was to that particular person out to everyone. Not everyone of my clients, even just everyone that was in my email system. Frankly, whoever this was has a better contact list now than I do, and I would actually buy that from them if I could. But it was very scary, and I immediately messaged everyone. And there is a lot to that, as we referenced before, a lot to blaming me for doing something wrong. Am I running a secure environment? How could I allow this to happen? The email that went out was, of course, click this link sort of thing. And thankfully, there were never any damages that came from it, or there were never any, any of my customers that were affected by it, which could have been very, very bad. But just alerting everyone and having a lot of those discussions, it was embarrassing.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
embarrassing, and that's what a lot of it is people are embarrassed. They've been scammed. They see that stuff on television and they think I'd never fall for that. It's just like women in romance scams. Everybody says, no, no, no man can deceive me that way. Well, gee, it happens every day. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with these situations. I've opened bad emails before, and I should know better. But
Yeah.
I've been caught opening them before. Um, they can be very tricky, and people that aren't trained, that don't understand, will just pop them open.
Yeah.
And I have to tell my husband every day. He'll open and say, "There's a message from American Express, and we've got a problem." And I'll say, "How do they spell American Express?" And he'll look at it. He says, "It's spelled wrong." I said, "Well, then it's not American Express." Okay, these are the things you got to look for.
I had to remove my bookkeeper from our website because she was targeted so much, and this was years
Oh,
ago.
I
You
bet.
know, and I've been very vigilant with training our staff and being careful. Look at the email. I'm never going to ask you to send 10 Amazon gift cards to
Yeah.
somewhere. I'm
Oh, I
never
love
going to email you to change your direct deposit. I mean, I probably get, not every day, but almost every day, some sort of phishing emails.
that. Oh,
Do you
sure.
do you think that those phishing emails have improved? With I would maybe attribute it to a chat GPT, that because so many of the emails before were worded pretty poorly,
Yeah.
and now there does seem to be an improvement with them. Actually, a lot of them are quite good.
Yeah, I think it has to do with artificial intelligence, chat GPT. It's going to get worse because people are going to be able to pick up on your verbiage.
Hmm.
If I'm listening to your podcast. I know how you sound. I know how you speak. Even if I don't duplicate your voice, I can duplicate your, what is it, your pentameter, your patter in your speaking, and that's going to get worse. And then
Mm.
with the deep fakes that they're able to produce now,
Yeah.
they can take you or I and have us saying just about anything as
Mm.
long as they've got a few minutes of our
Yeah.
speaking somewhere. And everybody's got us speaking everywhere. So it's just going to be very difficult. And I think, and I preach this to the clients, secure your assets, then insure your assets. I don't want to insure you if you're not
Mm.
trying to keep your security up at the other end. It does you no good, it does me no good, because the insurance companies aren't going to be happy with me. But this next year, I think for 2024, Brad, I think you're going to see the insurance companies demanding the employees all get trained. I don't
Yeah.
think that's going to be an option anymore.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest ones because this crime is getting so bad that they're going to be concentrating an awful lot on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well point. I loved your phrase, secure your assets, insure your assets. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. That's probably gonna be the title of this one. Um,
You can steal it.
do you have a a business segment that you go after or like to pursue in the cyber arena?
um, I've been doing all of the commercial lines here at our office,
Yeah.
just going to all our commercial clients. But I like car dealers and truck dealers.
Okay.
They actually pay more. They actually are some of the best because they have known for years that they have issues because of financing.
Mm.
And so the very first cyber policy I wrote was for a car dealership. Somebody that I knew and went out and said, "Have you seen this?" And he said, "Yes." And I think we need it. And I went, "Whoa, okay, easy." But very few of those are that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in small business, so anything under 100 million, and I like retail. I've done a lot of that, so it's professional's a little tougher. I've tried some professional too. That's a little tougher.
Why do you feel that's a little tougher? Because they don't
Um,
think they need it, or
Part of it, they don't think they need it, especially like engineers. It's like battling.
Mhm.
Engineers, I don't need that. I don't have anything that they want. And that's when I learned to say, yes, you do. You have a bank account.
Mm.
And because it was, nobody's going to ransom me. I don't need this. Nobody's going to ransom me. They don't need any of my schematics or anything. Well, yeah, they do. They'll take whatever they can get. And the first thing they really want is anything that's going to make them money. And once I got over the fact that I can get around that nobody's going to bother me routine, then it was a lot easier for me to sell the cyber. And I preach this to other agents and, even agents living in my area. Stop trying to be a super agent and explain the entire policy day one. Just hit them with the crime. And when you come back to deliver it, then you can go through all the wonderful coverages that come along with it. So that's my idea. That's the way I sell it.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple, and it's something that people can always understand is their bank account.
Yep.
I've aligned it a little bit to life insurance almost.
Yeah.
People know that they need it. They know there's a need for it. They've heard about it. They've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
It has to be sold.
Have you started selling personal cyber yet?
No.
Okay. And you're an agency owner.
Yeah.
Look into that, because that's going to be the next big thing, is everybody having their own personal cyber policy. And there are several companies that will sell it standalone right now. Several companies will attach it to a homeowner's policy and take off the identity theft and put the personal cyber on. The personal cyber, the reason I like it, first of all, you can get the liability in case maybe you pass on a bad email like you did, personally you do that, or it's covering cyberbullying. Now that's interesting, because that's an intentional act in reality, but they're going to cover it anyway if your child should, get involved in that and you get sued for it. And on the other end, which I thought was really interesting, some of the bigger companies, the AIGs, the Chubbs, are offering the reverse on cyberbullying. They're willing to pay the mental health costs of the child that gets bullied. Yes, it's wonderful. And it's not that expensive. I've seen it as low as $50. I've seen it, depending on who it is and the value of their, what they have. You're looking at maybe a couple $1,000s a year. But if I'm doing my Schwab account online and my online banking at home, I have the same exposure that I do as a business owner.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's both of those sides of things are really, really important on the personal side.
Yeah.
Because how prevalent is that? That's been for a long time, bullying, excuse me, to have some sort of coverage in place for that. And that's going to speak to a lot of parents, I think.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. And people, after the pandemic, everybody doing everything online. Now I've got 4,000 personal lines clients that need to be told that they have an issue. And maybe they would, even if they want to only take $100,000 of liability coverage for that, and it costs them $75 a year. That's a nice add-on to every homeowner's policy.
Talk a little bit about, in your estimation, you do a fair amount of educating in cyber, right?
I do. I have been teaching for the National Alliance and the CISR courses, and I'm going to be teaching CIC. I've already done one. And I was doing locally for the Greater Cincinnati Insurance Bureau and for the Ohio Independent Agents. I wrote a couple of cyber courses, and it kind of picked up. And the National Alliance said, "Well, let's do a free hour of cyber for the agents." And I did the free hour, and they came back a month later and said, "No, now we need to sell it. Now there's a lot of people that want to hear it, so let's do a regular hour." And now it's expanded to 3. And then we did a personal cyber, which went over very well too. And we're going to do longer personal cyber. And I enjoy the teaching. I think the agents need help
Yeah.
understanding what they've got their hands on. And I think when you and I were talking earlier, my feeling is we have so much to cover. We're trying to do so much for so many clients. And we've got so much on our minds that this one little thing sitting out there that doesn't make a fantastic amount of money for us is just sometimes just too much more to handle. And so I say, if you don't want to handle it yourself, find a fellow agent that likes to do it and strike a deal and let them handle your cyber and you back off of it and not worry about it. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to get the agents to do, to understand you're not going to be able to know everything for everybody. If that's not what you want to do, find somebody that'll do it for you.
Yeah, it's great advice. It's
Mm-hmm.
great advice, which means I'm going to start targeting a lot of local agents to try and partner with, because I would love to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you and I know insurance agents' egos.
Yeah. 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 But
Yeah.
some don't. Some don't. I mean, for example, again, I target it, or I liken it to life insurance. Life insurance for me, and it's my personal feeling. I let go of life insurance sales years and years ago,
Yeah.
and outside of a simple term plan. And I would say, this is what I have. Otherwise, I can refer you
Yeah.
somewhere else, because it's not my specialty, and it's not something that I really want to get involved in.
Absolutely. And I think
So
that's what more the agents have to do with cyber too.
yeah,
Cyber, fiduciary, anything like that that's really in directors and officers that's out of their direct realm.
yeah,
Refer it to somebody else and know that you're not going to have a problem in the future.
yeah. I'm going to ask you this. You may or may not have an answer or a general sense on it, but just because you've been educating and spent time around a lot of other insurance agents and agencies, what is your sense in terms of how well agencies are securing themselves? One, and because I know in our state, we just this year we had a requirement to be compliant with a certain level of security. I don't think a lot of agencies really are. um
I will tell you from talking with the um, agency, um, the state agency associations, that a lot of the agents do not have cyber, even though it's a requirement of their E&O.
yeah,
And it just boggles my mind that you're out selling insurance and you don't have that coverage. And you and I are sitting here with thousands of people's information.
yeah,
Next to an accountant, we have more financial information on people than anybody would even think about. And if somebody would get into our system and take all the information out, I'm looking for the word, but I can't think of it, extrapolate all the information, they'd have a field day.
yeah. We have a massive exposure.
Yes,
um,
we
um
certainly do.
a massive exposure.
Yeah, and a lot of the agents still don't carry it. It's an expense for an insurance agency. Yes, I will say, for us to carry cyber is expensive, but it's just another cost of doing business.
Yeah,
And it's the same with law firms. I will tell you that I am sure that less than 50% of all the law firms, accounting firms, engineering firms, professional people all told have cyber insurance. I got contacted last year by a doctor's office that didn't have it. I'm thinking to myself, all of this, all these years that
yeah,
we've been talking about in hospitals, and a doctor's office still didn't have it. Yeah.
yeah. Not only that, agree, the cyber insurance, but to your words, secure your assets, insure your
Mhm.
assets. I think I'm fairly certain what is missing for sure is the securing.
Oh,
of it.
absolutely, absolutely. You and I and are living in areas where there is a lot of business, and when cyber first started to get popular, all of a sudden every buddy's uncle became a cyber specialist as far as security, and all of these security people were popping up. And it didn't take too long before you could figure out which were the good ones and which were the bad ones. And I've managed to align myself with a couple good ones in this area. And when I talk to people and they're not secure, I say, look, here's a name. Here's two
Yeah.
names. Give them a call.
Yeah.
No, they're not cheap. But,
I tried to do a lot of it myself, as I usually do. I usually think I can figure things out, and maybe I can. And I
Mhm.
piece together a little bit of security from my own VPN, a little multi-factor authentication. And then I thought, what am I doing? I don't know if I'm doing this right or not. So finally, I partnered with CyberFin, and I'm really happy to have a professional do it. And for $50 a month, per user, it's nothing,
No.
to have something done right by a professional with real, I mean, it's a no-brainer for insurance
I would,
agencies.
I would think for all professional business,
Yeah.
it should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Accounting firms, you know, when the one accounting firm, I looked at him and I said, who has more information about a client than you do? Who would be
Correct.
able to, it's, everything, their stock accounts, the numbers, everything about them. If someone gets into your system, you're going to get sued big time.
Big time.
So it's very interesting what's out there and what people are willing and not willing to pay for. We do a lot of work with contractors in our office, and contractors are some that say nobody's going to bother me, and no, nobody's going to ransom them. But what they're finding out is that the banks are starting to require them when they're doing construction loans, and other contractors are starting to say, hey, if you want paid, you've got to prove to me that you have pollution liability and you've got cyber liability along with your general liability.
To your point, they have a bank account.
Oh, yes, absolutely they do. And some days those bank accounts get big amounts of money dropped into them.
And specifically with our contracting friends,
Yep.
there's a lot of invoicing going on,
Yeah.
and many of our contracting friends are not the best with paperwork
No. No, they're not.
or tracking. So, and you just gave me an idea. I mean, these would be prime targets.
Let me
Really.
give you two more prime targets. Property management companies. Now think about it. I've got a man who's got 450 apartments. When does he get paid?
First of the
Between the
month.
1st and the 10th of the month, he gets
Yeah.
paid. And especially if he's doing Section 8 housing,
Mhm.
that money hits the bank. And these thieves know that. So your property managers, your realtors that are doing transfers with the title work. Okay.
Mhm.
That title work goes through on hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. So those are two people that have massive exposures.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are two good types of accounts to be working on.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go, people. You have all kinds of people we can target out there for
Yeah.
cyber insurance. It's easy.
What's really bad is, and I told somebody the other day, I know enough now with the help of one MSP, I could get my hands on a whole lot of money really easily. It's that easy anymore that just a general knowledge can give you the ability to get into somebody's accounts.
Yeah. Let's want to pivot a little bit into a little bit more of your background, because I've heard you just tell some really, really good stories. Talk a little bit about how you've seen the insurance business change over the years.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many, right? I mean, there's so many areas. I know you've talked in the past, about, the the lack of women in the industry. And I know I've heard you say before, like I was the only one. I looked around and there was no, there
Yeah,
was nobody else.
the women in sales. There
Yeah.
were when I was started in sales. There was nobody around that was selling. I had no mentors. There was no LinkedIn. There was nobody to turn to. The independent agents didn't even want to hear about it. I mean, it was like, there was nobody. And it was okay, I'm just going to go out and do this and I'm going to try. Um, I my background being a technician, having been a CSR, my advantage was I had knowledge of coverage and
Yeah.
I could rate. And I could walk into and I did it before. I'd walk into a dealership and say, look at the accounts and say, gee, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and you're being overcharged $2,700 on this and $3,000 on that. And they'd say, how do you know that? I'd say, well, this is what I did. I'm experienced at this. And so I used my knowledge to sell. I'm not a good salesperson. I cannot sell anything to anybody. I can give them my knowledge and hope that they'll accept my knowledge and want to talk to me because of that. But I was never sales trained. But I think women, from my point of view, women are much better salespeople in insurance than they portray themselves to be, especially commercial insurance and life insurance, because people will trust a woman before they'll trust a man. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
And because this sounds kind of silly, but women portray themselves as a mother figure. And if you and I were to go out and be competitive on a one-to-one basis, trying to sell cyber insurance, they'd trust me first.
Well, one, more.
Well, leaving that out, I think they trust a woman first, which isn't necessarily good. Okay.
So why do you think that is? I don't disagree with you.
I think that's just been are the way we've been raised. Men will do awful things and women won't. Women will always be nice. Well, women aren't always nice.
No.
But that's just the way we've always been raised. And I think it's to take advantage of it. I don't understand why more women aren't in sales, why they aren't selling more cars. The same with insurance. How many women car salesmen do you see? Very few, and they should be very good at it because women buy cars.
Do you think it's a little because maybe women are a little more disarming or a softer, or I can see where maybe a man might be perceived as, or I could see another man being having his guard up a little bit more.
Maybe men are perceived as being more dramatic and direct, where women are more empathetic and understanding and look at things from a different way. And I think that's true. That's true. And we don't have enough women in the business in sales. Now, I argue this with other women. They're talking about women in the CSR ends of the industries. A lot of those women would be excellent salespeople because of their knowledge, and they're afraid. And it is a big strike. It is striking out. It is walking away from that salary, that big salary that you might be making, into taking as little as you can to get your book built up. But I think the more women that choose to do that, the better off the industry is going to be. Look at State Farm. State Farm figured out 20 years ago that they needed women. And they went out and did a heck of a job bringing women salespeople into the force. And I think the independent agency system needs to do that drastically and get some women agency owners.
Did you, if I want to make sure I heard you right, do you think that there's fewer women in sales because they're afraid? Is that what you said? And
I think so.
And what do you think they're afraid of?
They're secure. If you're a CSR, you're in a secure position.
Yes.
You have a salary, you have your hospitalization. To go into sales in an insurance agency, you're gonna take the normal way of doing it is taking a salary for 3 years or 5 years, and at the end of that 5 years, the salary is cut, and it's whatever your commission is. It is, and that takes a lot of stepping out and saying, okay, I'm going to have to work very hard for this, and maybe there isn't that person standing there giving them the help they need. I didn't have help. I just went out and did it. Some people need the training, they need the help. Yeah. And that might be part of it. Also, women have families that they worry about and children. But on the other hand, too, if you look at it from the other direction, what business gives you more flexible time than sales?
Yeah.
If I don't want to come in till 10 in the morning and work until 8 at night, that's up to me. If I'm going to be in Cleveland in the morning and I've got to leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, if I want to shut down at the office at 1, nobody's going to say anything as long as my sales are up. If I do all my sales in 6 months and kind of disappear for 6 months, who cares? As long as I'm maintaining my accounts. And it's a lot more flexible. And I think they should start to look at that and say, look, this is something that I should try. Maybe I won't like it. I mean, there's a lot of not liking it too. There's a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
You and I both know there's a lot of rejection, and you got to be able to say, I didn't need you in the first place. One of those kinds of things. So, I think we need more women in the sales end. I think that they would drive the industry better from that point of view. I really have been encouraging women to get into sales more. And I think they have the abilities. They've just got to find the right mentor, the right help.
Danielle Smink I've heard her say before regarding sales and the mindset, some will, some won't, who's next?
Yeah.
And, that's a little bit of the mentality that you have to have. And that's not personal. Someone rejection, it's just is what it is. That's part of the sales game.
It's a numbers game. I don't care what they say. It still gets down to being a numbers game, Brad. If I talk to 10 people, I'll sell 2.
Yeah. Do you think I feel like that has changed. I know an awful lot of powerhouse women in this industry, both in sales and in ownership. Yeah. And they're some of the best owners in the industry. Do you feel like in your day, when you were getting in sales, were there men reluctant to help you, or especially when you were starting to see some success, or were you around good people?
I was around good people. I wasn't around anybody who tried to stop me or sabotage me.
Yeah.
And probably because I offered them help.
Yeah.
When you're working with when you can tit for tat, it's a lot better. One of the biggest accounts I have that I've had for years is a truck dealership, and I got that account working with another agent. He said to me, "I've got this in, and I don't know what to do with it," and so I wrote it and did a commission split, and I've handled it for forever, and it was. I can help you and you can help me. And I think that's the way I did it for 4 years. And I didn't have problems with other men. I was the first local woman agent to lead the independent agents, which back then was a big deal. No, I didn't have any problems with that. Yeah. But then, you might have heard my story. My one mentor when I was, and I'm going to tell the story because I know you heard it before. Okay. When I started in the business, I had an office manager at Prudential, and she was the most beautiful 50-some-year-old female I ever met. And she had the most perfect hair and dressed immaculately. I mean, just gorgeous. And she always had a shawl. Shawl was on her, shawl was off of her, shawl was on her, shawl was off of her. And I started there, And I was 18 years old, and I was 110 pounds and wearing short skirts, and I was looking good back then. And several of the married men were hitting on me. And she pulled me aside and she said to me, I got two things for you. You don't shit where you eat. And the other one is when you turn 50, you get a shawl. And I thought, okay, the first one I think I understand, but I don't understand the shawl routine, but I'll figure that out. So she went on vacation, and one of the other assistant managers came up to me and she said, do you know what Margaret meant? And I said, I think so. She said, look at Mr. So-and-so when he comes in every day. And he was the office guy and the head of the office. And she said, that was an affair 30 years ago. And she said, he's got a wife and kids, and she smiles when he smiles at her, and she cries when he scolds her. And she said, she's never married. She says, and that's why she told you that. I said, okay. So I go on in my life, and I made it a point never to date anybody within the property and casualty industry. Now, I dated some guys in the life industry. There's some vice presidents in New York that don't want to hear my name, but nobody in the property and casualty agency, because it's too small when you get right down to it. So one day, I'm 50 years old. I'm walking through Macy's, and I said, Margaret said when you're 50, you've got to get a shawl. So I got a shawl. I threw it on the back of my chair. It's sitting there right now, same shawl. And I thought that was stupid, but that's okay. Margaret's long dead. And one day, I'm sitting there and I start to freeze. And I grab that shawl and I put it on around me. And about 5 minutes later, I'm warmed up. I throw the shawl down. Next day, the same thing happens. I said, God damn, Margaret was right. You have to have a shawl. So you learn things in the business from people you don't know and you don't know why.
That's amazing. That's outstanding.
That's my favorite story.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Last thing before we let you go here, what would you like to accomplish in 2024? What are some things you'd like to improve on?
I love doing the podcasts. I'd like to do at least a dozen this year. More teaching. I'm starting to write more programs to teach. I love teaching. I love speaking. I like doing a lot of speaking. That's my favorite thing. I was asked if I wanted my own podcast. No, I do not. I don't have the time for it, to be very honest with you.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I just want to be out there.
You're an amazing guest.
Thank
you. This was great. I had a blast. We talked a lot of cyber today, which was great, which has again become a passion of mine. And I think a lot of our agencies need to get into it more as well. Everyone else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.